Okay, so we'll start. When we begin with second chapter, uh, in the first chapter and in the beginning of the second chapter, Arjuna was giving various reasons why he doesn't want to fight. One of the first reason he mentioned was his compassion. Basically, he does not want to kill his own men for the reason of getting the kingdom. And Krishna would, break each argument step by step, and he began taking the first argument, which is compassion. And the way Krishna was breaking, we started with the last week. So the discussion was about giving the understanding of soul which is different from body, and which is the real personality, and that has no death, no birth. It is an eternal entity that exists beyond death, this body. So he further continues in the following verses. We'll start with verse number 22 again. We kind of discussed this briefly, but I'll just repeat again because it's a very important verse to understand. Are you all able to clearly hear me? Or is there any disturbance?
There is a disturbance from someone else. Maybe everybody else should mute.
Yeah, I'll mute all. But my voice is clear, Prabhu. Can you answer now again? I muted everyone, but can you answer again? Is my voice clear, or is there?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, bro.
Yeah. Okay, let's read this beautiful verse. Verse number 22, second chapter. Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya navani grihnati naroparani tata sarirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. Vasamsi jirnani literally means, Vasamsi refers to the garments, the dress that we wear. Just like jirnani means the way it gets worn out. Similarly, the jiva is the soul, also wants out the body. And when it wants out, it keeps changing the bodies. So as a person puts on the new garments, giving up the old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. It's a very powerful verse. The focus is that the body is not very important thing. Just like, for example, we are, say we want to travel to Himalayas, or any cold area, where the weather is too cold. What do? We wear according to the purpose. Basically, we wear sweaters, very thick sweaters, and be able to withstand there. And then when you want to go to a party, you wear a different dress. When you go to your office, you wear a different type of dress. When you stay at home, you have a different dress. So you adopt your dress according to the need or the purpose that you are serving, isn't it? So similarly, the soul, according to its desires, wears different bodies. And the scriptures say there are 8.4 million varieties of bodies, starting from microbes up to very high level demigods. All these are jivas wearing different levels of bodies. Within the human existence, there are about 400,000 varieties of consciousnesses. So how these bodies are all different from each other? They're all different based on the consciousness, and based on one's desires, and based on one's actions. Karma and desire, these two things determine the next body. And the verse is saying that the body is not as important. Body keeps changing. The soul, Just like when you are wearing different bodies, you wear it for the purpose, but the dress is not so important. So Krishna is also similarly talking about the relative importance of soul versus the body. Body, of course, body helps us do the purpose of life that we are living with for, but it's not as important. And we keep changing. And it's mentioned that we we you know our body is based on our desires. We wear for the desires. When um, yeah, what do you call, there is a nice term for that. We are dressed by our desires. Yeah, so we are dressed for our desires and by our desires. Basically, at the time of death, your consciousness determines what is the next body you are going to get. And what is your consciousness going to be at the time of death? That is determined by how you lived through your life. Because death is like a test. At the time of test, what would you remember? Whatever you have prepared in the course of time for the test, right? So that's why living spiritual life will lead to spiritual thoughts at the time of death, and therefore would get you a higher spiritual body in the best case, or at least a higher body than what you are currently. So this kind of deeper understanding of the difference between soul and body doesn't exist in any other Abrahamic religions like Christianity or Islam. For example, if you take Christianity, I mean, there is an understanding of soul and body and they being different, but they kind of, their understanding is that the jiva's body can be preserved in a coffin and buried. And the idea is that when they take the, when they get liberated, they would wear this existing body that they left, and with that body they enter the heaven. But I mean, it's in many ways illogical in the sense that if suppose a person is born very old, or is, he passed away very old, does it mean that he's going to continue to have the old body that he had? Or if a person is very young, is that going to be the body that he's going to wear after the death? So those kind of many philosophical questions are not very well addressed with that kind of a mixed understanding of so the eternality of body is never is um, as per our script, our Vedic scriptures, eternality of body is never accepted as a truth. But in Abrahamic religions, there is this kind of misunderstanding that there is no clear differentiation between what exists, what continues to exist versus what does not. So that kind of you know gives the edge of Vedic understanding of soul and body. Besides that, yeah. So another point I want to mention is, so sometimes many atheists argue that religion leads to a lot of wars in the world. They have led to many fights and wars, and even they call jihadis as one example, because jihadis, they are brainwashed with the understanding that if they give up this body in the name of God by killing the opposing religions, or the people who do not share the same religious understanding of life, if they kill that, then the understanding is that they will get to enjoy about 60 virgins in their next birth, in a heaven, eternally. So that kind of a misunderstanding was provided in certain religions. And some of the atheists would argue that, yeah, religion is the cause of all these kind of issues. But actually, our Sanatana Dharma does not endorse such misunderstandings. So the problem is not um, the real problem is the material misconception of life, material conception of life. And Bhagavad Gita, so if you look at this kind of understandings about, that the one that I talked about, jihadis, the jihadis, their goal is to again enjoy virgins in a future life. And so they're ready to give up this current life. But there is a clear misconception there. The misconception is the conception of life is still material there, meaning they don't have clear understanding of what is soul, what is body, and the temporality of the body. And the real purpose of life is not to enjoy this, continue to enjoy materially. Material conception of life means I am the enjoyer now. I will continue to enjoy the senses the way I'm currently enjoying. I'm having, I'm enjoying through eating, mating, and defending, and I will continue to enjoy through these means, through eating, through mating. So these are called material conceptions of life. Means I will continue to enjoy the way I'm trying to enjoy my senses currently. But Sanatan Dharma does not endorse such kind of a enjoyment. Actually, it endorses spiritual understanding and spiritual enjoyment, which it gives the understanding of eternality of the soul. It gives the understanding of eternality of God, and the real enjoyment is in the position of being a service to God. So it's quite dramatically different understanding than what many religions give in terms of misunderstanding, or this kind of wrong endorsements of material conception of life. So we can appreciate the depth of our Sanatan Dharma when we understand these kind of verses. So here in this verse, primarily the importance of transmigration of the soul is given. Means trans means movement. The jiva keeps moving from one body to another body, and at one point it is in one body, and there is a period of transition, and it moves to the new body. And what determines the new body? It is primarily determined by the jiva's desires and jiva's actions, two factors. And who carries them to the new body? He is carried by the subtle body. I mean, he gets carried because he's still attached to the subtle body. He's still, and under the supervision of the super soul. Super soul is like our best friend. Means the Lord, the Supreme God, exists within our body as the guide. So he helps the body get, he helps the soul get the next body as a facilitator for its enjoyment as it desires. So in this verse, a beautiful verse from third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in 31st chapter, Kapila Deva's teachings, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kapila Deva's words. Karmana daivanetrena jantur dehopapattaye striya pravishta udaram pumsoretah kanashraya. The personality of God had said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. So the important thing is, it's not a random selection. It's not any random uh, decision that determines the next body. It happens according to a perfect plan under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, basically in the form of Paramatma that exists within the Jiva's heart. Yeah, I felt I was a little bit quick last week. So if you have any questions on this, we'll discuss before moving forward. Do you have any questions on this, anybody, on what we discussed at this point? Is everything clear? If,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, quick question. How do we decide on the next body, right? When you say that the super soul has a factor, that as a factor, that how is that determined, right? Is it like I've heard people say that, when you for rebirth, it's usually in the same family, like ancestors who are born in the same family, or spiritually you have to be at the same level, or things like that, right? Like, are there such factors that are considered? Do we know enough about that?
yeah, it depends. I mean, it can be, the jiva can be born in the same family. It depends on the attachment between the jivas. For example, if a person is very much attached to the dog, and the dog is very much attached to the a man, right? So it is very much possible after their current life, they would transpose the bodies, meaning the man becomes the dog and the dog becomes the man. It depends on the jiva's attachment. If he's very much attached, if that's what is on top of his consciousness at the time of death, and very much it is possible that the jiva gets the body within the same, within the same home, possibly. Yeah. Or if he is fully spiritually inclined, he may go back to God, or he may, if he is very advanced, he may go to higher planets. As we mentioned, there are, many higher planets within this universe, or it could enter, there are infinite universes, he could enter a different universe. um, Anything is possible. So there are um, there are 9 holes within the body, for especially if you consider a yogi tries to advance his consciousness higher and higher within the body, um, through various chakras. And if he is able to push it through the Agi chakra on the head, top of the head, on the forehead, um, so he could very much achieve Brahmajyoti within this life, after this life. So that is beyond this material realm. Yeah, anything is possible, based on his consciousness at the time of death. That's why we need to lead our entire life spiritually. That's when we get the opportunity to live at the time of death, um, to a higher destination, because the time of death is very painful. At the time of pain, you remember the things that you are very much attached to. If suppose you are very much attached to God, call him Krishna. If you are trying to remember Krishna at the time of death, you will go back to Krishna's place. So it's like that. It's very much dependent on what your consciousness is filled with. And if you are very much afraid and you are attached to your children, you could be very much born as your children's child. Yeah, anything is possible.
Prabhuji, one follow-up question on this. Like, I've heard people talk about soul contract also, right? Like, what does that really mean? Like, is it, like, I have an example here too. Like, my dad used to say, I'm going to be born as your son in my next life. Is that a soul? Is that considered as a soul contract? Like, I've heard people say this phrase, but I don't know what that really means.
If he is very much strongly desirous of that, it's very much possible he could have come as your son.
Hmm.
Now, if he has that desire,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and if he has enough karma to become a human being,
Mm-hmm.
it's very much possible. If he had lived a pious life, in general,
Mm-hmm.
he will at least get a human body.
Mm-hmm.
And if his desire is to be born as your son, very much it is possible. Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
So, Prabhu, can you clarify the role of karma here when Krishna says that as a supreme soul, as per desire at the end of the death, I
Correct.
make things happen and I create a body, but now where is the karma plays a role?
Yeah. So according to it all happens according to the karma that jiva has. If the jiva doesn't have that much karma to be born as a human being, he could very much be born in a lower species. Suppose he was very, very cruel to animals. For example, he was killing animals mercilessly. Even if he desires to become a human being, such a person will not get a human body. He will be born in the, suppose you are killing cows, somebody is killing cows, for example, right? He has to be killed in the same fashion that he was killing. He has to go through the same karma that he has subjected the jiva in terms of suffering, because there is nothing, everything is going to balance out in this existence. There is nothing that you can superpower over somebody else. There is nothing like that. If you try to abuse something, you have to be abused in return. There is no escape from that. So universal law is very just. So, but it could happen. Let me tell the story of Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra, in his previous life, many lifetimes before, he was a what do you call, um, um, basically a bird hunter, right? So he
Yes.
would go into jungles and hunt birds and make a living out of it. So at end, unfortunately, he had a desire. The desire is that when he shoots, he half kill the animals and try to enjoy their death. Very much similar to Valmiki. Um, so this personality, one time he shooted a nest. In this nest, there was a mother bird, and that mother bird had about 100 birdlings, young birds, about 100 of them. So in that shooting, this hunter, he actually murdered all of them and burned them, all the 100 birds. So now he has to go through a karma to be, to go through the, no, actually the mother is not dead. So mother, before the mother, all the birds were killed, about 100 of them. Now this hunter has to be awarded punishment such that he goes through the same suffering. But because, for him to have 100 sons, he had to do so much pious karma. So he spent many lifetimes after that current lifetime as a hunter. He had done, lot of good karma, so that at some point after many lifetimes, he gets the enough karmic balance such that in this current life he would have about 100 sons. And that life is when he is born as Dhritarashtra, the son of Vyasa, the foster son. So he becomes a great king, but unfortunately, he had to see the death of his 100 sons. So the karma works very weird. And in spite of, at the time of death of his 100 sons, Dhritarashtra asks Krishna, "Oh Krishna, why at all I have to go through all this suffering of seeing 100 of my sons die?" Krishna says, "This is your past, and this is what happened in the past, and so this is your due. So there is nothing unjust. So we cannot complain for the suffering that we are going through in the current life. Everything is a perfect balance. It's all that we are actually due for. We can never complain for our karma." Okay? That,
Perfect example, Prabhu.
yeah,
Very good. Thank you.
thank you. Let's read the next verse. So you read a very beautiful purport here. Verse 23. Nainam chindanti sastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, na chainam kledayantyapo, nasosayati marutaha. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. Basically, it talks about the spiritual characteristic of the soul. What are those characteristics? So the soul cannot be cut into pieces by any weapon because it is not physical. It cannot be burned by fire, meaning it's beyond fire. It exists beyond fire. And it cannot be moistened by water. It cannot be withered by wind. So the soul cannot be under the influence of any of these things. So if you kill a person, it is only the body that gets destroyed. The soul does not. So it continues to exist. So Prabhupada talks about all kinds of weapons, swords, flame, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, in addition to the modern weapons of fire. So modern weapons of fire, Prabhupada is referring to the atomic bomb, right? Even the nuclear weapons of modern age are classified as fire weapons. But formerly, there were other weapons made of all different types of material elements. Fire is a gross element. Earth, water, fire, ether, these are all material elements. And fire is one of the element. And all the weapons of mass destruction like nuclear weapons that we know as of now, they're all considered fire weapons. In the previous ages. Yeah, so here is a nice interesting point. Nor do modern scientists has knowledge of tornado weapons. In the previous ages, also there were great weapons like Brahmastra and tornado weapons. And it will be interesting to understand how they actually work. They don't work by material manipulation. For example, how do we create atom bomb? The scientist would study the material elements, how they operate, fission, fusion. They understand exactly at subatomic level how these elements operate, and they manipulate on top of it, isn't it? So through material manipulation, we achieve this extraordinary power of these atomic weapons or nuclear weapons. So Jiva exists at one level, and he tries to manipulate matter, which exists at a lower level considered to Jiva. So he tries to manipulate matter and gain some kind of a control on how it operates, and thereby create these special nuclear weapons. Now, there are jivas at different levels of existence. We are jiva at one level, and there are higher jivas in the higher planets, like the jivas in Swargaloka, like Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Vayu. All these are considered higher, jivas at a higher consciousness or at a higher level. They have higher powers than we, and actually they control how all the material elements operate, like rain, air supply. All these have in charges from higher, from living entities at a higher dimension. Just like, it's very simple to understand. For example, we all have a government, right? In each country there is a government. The government takes care of civil supplies. You want water, there is a civil supply, there is a department. You want cleanliness, there needs to be a department, otherwise cleanliness cannot be maintained. There should be a sanitary department, sanitization, that would come and collect your garbage on a weekly basis or a daily basis, and clean the entire city or a state or a country, right? So there are departments at every level. And if you notice, in the universal, in the universe also, there is a universal government. uh, for example, uh, you know uh, there is a garbage, for example, right? It naturally gets dried by sun. So naturally that acts as a disinfecting or sanitization system. And you want air to live, and air is supplied. So now you see, there are you need food, right? The government at government level, it provides subsidies to poor people and provides basic necessities. Similarly, in the universal government, you see the food supply like grains, um, you know all the natural vegetation. You see, there is a parallel between the material government that we have within our countries and states and cities. So there is also a universal government which supplies our necessities, which cleanses the system, which awards. So similarly, a very a citizen that is law abiding and contributing to the society is awarded profusely within the somebody gets Paramveer Chakra or Bharat Ratna award. Similarly, in the universal government also, if somebody lives piously and helps others, and they will get higher planets to live in. So there is a perfect parallel system within the universal government, similar to how we see within our state governments. So the point I'm trying to drive is here. So the jiva can manipulate matter and achieve some kind of a superpower like our atomic power, or he can submit himself to higher jiva who controls the system. For example, if you want water supply, I will give you a very nice example. If you remember this, you will get a lot of clarity on the existence of higher jivas. Suppose there is a river in a village and it has excess of water, and a neighboring village does not have water supply. What this the village can do to get the water, they can talk to the village government in the city where there is profuse water supply and pay them some kind of tax and legally procure permission and get a pipeline established from that village to the other village and get the water supply. This is the legal way. What is the other ways? Suppose there is a jungle between the two villages and there is a pipeline laid out from village 1 to village 2, and there are few robbers in the jungle, and the robbers think, oh, who would go and go through the legal way and try to get the permission from the and pay the taxes. Let's do one thing. Let's see, hey, here is the supply of water. We make a hole in this pipe and make a attach a pipe here. We can get supply as much as we want, isn't it? There is a pipeline, there is availability of water. You make a hole, you get whatever you want. That is also an arrangement, isn't it? That is called material manipulation. That's exactly how science works. Okay, this rice grows like this. It doesn't know, the scientists don't know how exactly nature operates at a higher degree. They would manipulate, okay, I can genetically modify this little bit here, this chromosome and that chromosome, and thereby I can observe, okay, this can improve the productivity of this crop in in many ways, and I produce through those genetically modified ways and manipulate matter so that I get the benefit without paying, without a higher understanding of how this entire natural order is working. Or the other way, in Rig Veda and other Vedas, there are wonderful sacrifices. Those sacrifices are meant to appease the higher living entities like jivas in higher planets like Vayu and Varuna. You can appease the demigods, you can appease and please them, and thereby get the required supplies, and nature would supply at appropriate time the water, the rain, and the air, and everything would be naturally supplied. So this is, so you can manipulate the nature through mechanical means, through a scientific approach, which is like the robber mechanism I was talking. That's why I mean, many scientists think, oh, we don't need to, there is no need to understand about God. I mean, there is not even existence of God, because we are able to manipulate matter and achieve what we want. Yes, true, it is, but that is not the, that is not the natural way, and that is not, I mean, that would actually leads to ugra karma. It's not that you can get away with, you create, all this pollution, and there will be more natural disorderness by, nature manipulation. But the jivas in the previous lifetime, I mean previous ages, they have a higher understanding of higher jivas, and they would approach through the legal means. Legal means, if you want something, suppose, um, I mean, similar to how if you want something for your village, you can always approach your minister of the state or MLA and get things done in a legal way. Or you can manipulate by your own, by your own means and get it done, right? Similarly, the same steps exist in the universal government also. um, Similar things exist. I hope this kind of clarifies on, how it's a higher order science, where you can appease the higher living entities, which are actually in charge. So these living entities in Swargaloka and all, they are actually in charge of material affairs, and there are about 33 crore demigods who were all responsible for overall, they're like, the ruling cabinet of government. So they were responsible for all the material affairs within our existence. But without understanding all of this, scientists have a very narrow view of things and try to manipulate within our, understanding. And of course, you can achieve, because mechanical manipulation would definitely achieve things. It's never denied. But it is a different approach. Understand that there are different approaches to achieve the same thing. Just like, there is a body understanding within our modern medical science, but there exists a parallel understanding of body in Ayurveda also, and it works perfectly for those people, who strictly follow that. So there are, many people get bogged down by this understanding that, uh, you know science knows how to handle matter, and that's it, and there is no higher understanding. But that is a very narrow minded understanding of, of existence. There is a higher order existence, and if you study Vedas, you get, deeper understanding of how things work at a higher dimension. uh, a child might say, if suppose they go to a hotel or, an office, the door opens without any person standing there and opening the door. The child may think it is automatic, because he does not have a higher understanding of the mechanism behind how the automatic door operates. But the father of the child understands there is a higher order arrangement by which this door is opening right now automatically, because there is a detection mechanism, and the detection actually verifies the identity of the person who is there. There is identity check, after which the door really opens. It doesn't open for anybody. So similarly, when the nature operates in such perfect order with perfect seasons and perfect day and night times, and perfect arrangement for all that we need, like food, water, air, without which we cannot exist for a minute, one understands there must be a higher order arrangement. A person who is intelligible understands there must be a higher order arrangement, without which it cannot just work. So they understand at a at a deeper level, and try to understand what is that higher order arrangement, and how is this, how the overall cosmos operates. Okay, so that's what I wanted to convey in this verse. So there are higher order arrangements that we may not be aware, it may not be gross, but be open to that kind of understanding. Don't be just bogged down by okay, modern science speaks this and that's what it's all about. Knowledge means what only modern science prescribes, and that's it. There is nothing more. This is actually a very gross science. The science that we had was much more finer and subtle science. So for example, Brahmastra would go after a particular person. It is controlled through uh, it is controlled through mantra, a very subtle mantra, and it operates to very high degree of precision. Unlike atom bomb, which bursts open everything, it destroys, it leaves complete, damage to the affected area. For example, when Ashwadhama shooted Brahmastra on Parikshit Maharaj, who is still to be born and who is within the womb of Uttara, right? So the Brahmastra just targets that jiva within the womb of that mother Uttara, the wife of Abhimanyu, and it would go around. The Brahmastra enters the womb without touching, without affecting Uttara, and it tries to rotate around the jiva within the womb, and Krishna would enter the womb of Uttara at the moment, and would actually circumambulate the jiva and stop the Brahmastra, kill the jiva. So how fine precision it is, you see. So that is the kind of science we had before. Anyway, I don't want to delve too much. If you have any questions on this, we can discuss. We'll move on otherwise. Okay, I hope it is clear, understanding of higher dimension science. 24. Achedyoyam adhahyoyam akledyo sosya evacha nitya sarvagata stanur achaloyam sanatana. So again, further description of the soul. The individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. So the jiva's characteristics are further described as unbreakable. He does not go under subdivision. So the jiva continues to exist in that form. And insoluble, he cannot be mixed in any liquid. And he does not, insoluble means he cannot give up his identity. He still continues to exist with that identity. And can neither be burned nor dried. None of the fire can burn. It is interesting that there are bacteria even in fire. When when scientists talk about, oh, there is no life on moon, or other higher planets, because they contextualize that the body that they refer to that it can exist is of very similar nature as what we know as life, the conditions of for life's existence within this planet. But based on these characteristics, you see here, it cannot be burned nor dried. So it can, so the soul in itself can exist within fire. And in fact, even it is scientifically proven that there are bacteria even in fire. You can actually search online on Google. So there are fire bacteria, means these bacteria can exist with extremely high temperatures. How is that possible? Yes, because their body, the soul cannot be born, and soul continues to exist, and their body is made of fire, and they can continue to survive in that kind of a atmosphere, because soul has nothing to do with the body, and our body is made of primarily earth and water, and so it has its own specific needs. The higher planet jivas, their body is made of subtle body. Their primary body is what we consider as our subtle body. That becomes their primary body, which is made of intelligence, mind, and ego. That's it. They have only these three elements in their body. And there are other gross elements like fire and water. Just like a fish can exist naturally within water, and there are jivas that exist within fire. So based on your body, it could be made of fire, it could be made of water, it could be made of earth, it could be anything. So its existence is possible within that atmosphere. So life can exist in any higher planetary systems. And just like when you want to go live in polar caps, for example, right? You need to have certain body. That's when you can live there. There could be polar bears that are conditioned to live there, and when your body permits it, you can live there. There is no problem. So similarly, when we don't need to, when scientists say, oh, there is no life at all in any other planets, the life is it is just their understanding of what life is, and especially their understanding of what life is on earth. And their purview is just, they have no conception of subtle life or subtle body and the higher dimension existence, that only that comes only with understanding from Sanatan Dharma texts like Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, these scriptures. Okay, so our conception in sciences are quite narrow, because it's all based on what you observe with your senses, and senses are imperfect, right? Can you see any range of things? Our eyes can see certain range, right? There is higher range of what can be seen, but human eye can see certain range. And there are other animals that can see beyond that range, but again, senses have a limited capacity. The science that we know is based on what we understand from that limited capacity of the senses. So naturally, because our senses are imperfect, the science has to be incomplete. So the higher order science, the spiritual science, does not get limited by what modern science knows and what modern science experiences, because that's a higher order science, and it is talking about the soul, it is talking about the subtle body, which are all higher dimension existence. So where is the question of limiting it to the bodily imperfections, like what I can see and what your intelligence can understand? All of this has limitations. But the spiritual science has no human origin. Any human origin things are limited by their imperfect senses. But the Gita science does not come from humans. It comes from God himself. It's apaurishaya. Apaurishaya means of supreme origin. It's not coming from a mundane person like you or me or anybody else. or a Albert Einstein, doesn't matter. Everybody within this existence is limited in their, in their capacity and senses. So the knowledge that we gain are also limited. We cannot be unlimited in terms of what we gain in knowledge. And he is everlasting, unchangeable. Means the jiva, the soul, doesn't change at all. He is immovable. He cannot be moved. What does it mean? How does the soul move from one body to another body then, if he is immovable? So that will be an interesting question. So the soul in itself cannot be moved. So when I mean, the previous verse itself talks about the jiva moving from one body to another body, just like a change of a dress, right? So this verse is talking about, movability of the soul by material means. Means through material means we cannot move. But then how does the soul move from one body to another body? Because it is attached to the subtle body. The subtle body is the storehouse of your desires, unfulfilled desires. And the jiva wants to fulfill the desires in the next body. He will be awarded a new body based on his desires under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. So because he is attached to the the subtle body, with the subtle body the jiva moves from one physical body to another physical body in the next life. And he is eternally the same. This jiva itself is eternally the same. He is never changed. Yeah, another important point here is he is present everywhere. What does it mean? The jiva is present everywhere. Is it meaning that the soul expands into universal existence? No. If it is, then this verse again contradicts that. The jiva moves from one body to another body, just like it changes the garments. So it means he is present everywhere, means he can exist anywhere. Nothing, no physical limitations can stop it. He can exist in underwater, in the fire. He can exist in different planets. He can exist everywhere. It means he can exist in moon. It can exist in anywhere. There is no limitations for the spirit soul. He can exist anywhere in the universe or beyond universe. Sarvagata is significant because there is no doubt that the living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even in fire.
Prabhuji, I have a quick question if you don't mind.
Yes, Prabhu, sure.
So does this verse entail that a soul or a jiva can exist even without a body?
Yes. Ultimately, when your karma is completely dissolved, you exist as spirit soul. Yes. And actually you get a spiritual body at the time. The spiritual body is just an expansion of the spirit, and that's where you exist in spiritual world. But that is a higher concept. Let's not discuss that. But your existence within this material realm, the entire material realm, is, it could be within Brahma planet or in this planet or in a lower planet, doesn't matter, is continued as long as you have subtle body. And how long will you have your material body? You change within say 100 years within this life, right? You would move on to the new body. But the problem with that is you still have the subtle body. The subtle body continues to exist as long as you have a desire to enjoy within this world. Meaning, I want to be born as a millionaire. For example, you have a desire like that. Yes, maybe you will be sanctioned a body that can, or you want to be born as somebody's son, or you want to be born. you have certain desire. That desire clings you to this material existence. So the desire, where does it continue to exist? From your current existence within this body to the next body, within your subtle body. The subtle body is the repository of your desires. So especially the mind, intelligence, and ego, these three form the subtle body of the jiva. They are, so your existence will continue as long as your mind is filled with unfulfilled desires to enjoy within this world. So temporarily you will have only subtle body when you are relieved from this physical body, and after that, very soon, if you are a serious sinner, you might go through some punishment. Just like if somebody is a serial killer, he would be arrested for say 5-6 years within prison, and he would be punished, and um, he would be corrected, and after he transforms himself and becomes eligible to again live in society, he would be sent to again normal society. Similarly, you might be sent to some lower planets where there will be severe punishment, and for a short period, because the punishment happens, as I was explaining about Kala Chakra, the punishment runs very fast. Though your experience of punishment would be long running, but punishment happens quickly, and after the punishment is finished, again you will be sent to a some other planet to continue to exist. So during interim, most probably you would be just living with your subtle body. Yeah, you would exist without body, physical body. You would temporarily exist after changing this body with subtle body, and eternally your existence is spiritual. Actually, you don't belong to this middle world at all. This is a foreign place. Actually, this entire existence is a foreign to us, because spirit soul belongs to spiritual world. It doesn't belong to material world. Material realm is a what do you call is a very temporary and
Dukhalayam ashashvatam.
yeah, dukkhalayam ashashvatam. It's a very temporary and miserable existence, just like a jail. It's compared to jail, actually, this existence within, because you suffer through your body, you suffer through your material conditions. In so many ways you suffer in this existence. So all the scriptures, either Eastern or Western, they never recommend to continue to exist within this existence. They always recommend you to get out of this existence for that reason.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Prabhu, for the present everywhere, I'm still not able to connect from our angle. When we say present ever everywhere, means soul can go everywhere, or
No,
how?
actually, so yeah, soul can go. Soul has no limits. When you are, even when you are having just subtle body, within your gross body, you experience the major degree of limitations, right? Your physical body limits you in many ways. But when you are only with subtle body, you are already in a subtle form of existence, and you can freely move, very very much relieved. And now when you are at the spirit level, when you are even relieved of the subtle body, your experience is complete bliss on the spiritual level. Within this body also you can experience at that level. That is Jivan Mukta. When one advances spiritually, even though you exist within this body, the influence of the body ceases on you. You go beyond the three modes. So anyway, so the point is that the soul can exist anywhere. It can exist in fire, it can exist in water, it can exist in ether, it can exist in any planet. It has no limitations, basically.
Okay, so present everywhere means it can exist anywhere.
Anywhere. It can exist anywhere. Yeah.
Got it. Very good.
Prabhuji, a quick question. So, if you said higher planetary, like demigods and such, are they also like Jiva, like trying to
Very much,
get?
they're like Jiva. You can also become a demigod in your next life.
So they are also trying to attain salvation. I mean, basically, go to Goloka or go back to Godhead.
Some of them, if you read Bhagavatam, there are
Mhm.
prayers by demigods. They want to be born in this world because in this world there is more misery. In demigod life,
Mhm.
life is very enjoyable, very enjoyable. It's like a living in a five-star hotel all the time, where everything is arranged naturally. You don't need to work hard to make your ends meet there.
Mhm.
So this is a karma bhumi. In this world is where everybody accumulates karma,
Mhm.
and just like when you earn, you go and enjoy in, say, Mauritius, or you go some other or some other place where you enjoy for few days spending your money. So all the karma would be exhausted in higher planets actually, and they would again come back to the lower planets. The problem there is, you get a higher body, but because there is high availability of enjoyment, uh, there is very little chance to remember God. So the demigods sometimes fervently pray that they be born in, especially in this Kali Yuga. You know why? So in this Kali Yuga, through just by taking shelter of the holy name of God,
Mhm.
one gets the ultimate liberation, and that is considered the easiest way to achieve perfection. And we'll discuss this in a future. I was planning to talk about holy name in one. uh, I can show you all those prayers actually. It will convince you about what I'm talking about much clearly.
Oh,
um,
good.
yeah
Thank you.
so so they are jivas, just like, who is a cabinet minister? Does he have a special horns? No, he's just a citizen,
Mhm.
but he's chosen by people, or you know or or he would be appointed by the president, right? He's no different from us. Even in that sense, Brahma is also a jiva. And by the way, all of you were considered part of higher demigods at some point, after which only you are here. Generally, the fall down happens from a higher level to lower level. So you are at this level means you have already gone through, you could have been a Brahma at some point also already, uh, ruling the entire universe. Imagine. Yeah. So anyway, so it's little higher concept at this point, but yes. So the higher planetary living entities are, they are in charge of all the material affairs within our existence, our world, or bhulok. Bhulok and Bhuvarlok, they are controlled by Swargalok. And even higher, there are higher planets higher than Swargalok: Tapalok, Maharlok, Janalok. And life in Janalok and Tapalok is much superior compared to even Swargalok. What to speak of? And Satyalok or Brahmalok, the happiness is the life is much smoother than even Swargalok. So everything is relative. Just like, we may consider uh, living in some place, like say a poor country like um, Mugambe, or some uh, Zimbabwe, or the living conditions are so tough, isn't it? I mean, even take India. There is struggle for existence for many people. For them to get daily bread is a struggle, right? Yeah, it's a level of existence. So based on their karma, that is what they have gotten by their karma, right? So your life, lot of material problems are solved. You don't struggle in a queue to get ration, for example, or to get a bucket of water. You don't struggle. There are villages where people go 5 miles to fetch water every single day, and that is what they use for cooking. And the water that we use in flushing our toilet, that's their entire supply of day, for a day, after 2-3 hours of hard labor. Imagine, right? So life exists at different levels. It's not very difficult to imagine within our existence. Yeah, so similarly there are um, it's mentioned the most beautiful person within this existence, like say Aishwarya is the most beautiful person. I mean, she's not, but assume she is the one. Um, and in Swargaloka, the Apsaras were considered before them. The most beautiful one within this planet is like a frog. They look like a frog, it seems. That's what the comparison is. So the existence is variegated, and life exists at different levels. Yeah, that's what I would say. But for us, easier comparison is, so you can see in a poor country how the life standard is versus the life standard in, say, America or some other rich countries.
Prabhuji, I have a quick question.
Yes.
So the concept of karma, it only applies in Bhuloka. It does not apply in the higher planetary systems, is it?
Yes. Primarily Bhuloka. You I mean, so wherever there is free will means still they can also accumulate good karma and bad karma in higher planets, but they would be generally burning their karma. So anywhere there is free will means you have a choice to make decision X or decision Y. You have a free will. When you have a free will, you are subjected to karmic reactions. For example, take the life of a dog. It has very little free will. It has free will, but it has very little free will. So that's why they exhaust their karma. And so the sequence of bodies one gets in, any lower birds like dog or other animals, they act on instinct and they don't use their discriminatory powers as much as we do. So they are sequenced in the kind of bodies they take. But a human being is like a junction, is a body at a junction. So based on his actions, he might go back to lower lives, lower forms or lower planets. Lower forms means you could become a dog or cat or lower forms, based on your kind of activities you did in this life. Or you could go to lower planets to receive punishment. Or you could have performed very nicely in this life and could be awarded a higher planetary system. Or you could have achieved perfection and achieve complete liberation, where you completely dilute your subtle body and go back to God, into spiritual planet, and basically achieve liberation. So all of that is possible. Yeah, but primarily in in 5-star hotel, what do? You adjust your money, right? So similarly, higher planets generally are places of exhaustion actually.
Okay.
So that's why they it is mentioned like they all come down in the form of a there was a saying exactly how they fall down. These demigods fall down actually after they exhaust their shine punya karma. So there is a beautiful verse. We'll come back to we'll come and discuss that in a future chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned about like in the higher planets, they just have the subtle body. They don't have a physical body. It's just the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. And if they are just burning their karma, the question I had in my mind was, how do they get out of that cycle of, just maybe going between Bhuloka and a higher planet versus achieving, being like oneness with
So Swargaloka is not considered a very great place to go actually, compared to these much higher planets like Swargaloka. Most people just come back to this planet. Actually, they don't exist. They rarely these people go higher and higher, but some of them go actually, but when somebody goes to Tapaloka, or they actually meditate there, they continue to um, you know uh, make spiritual progress from where they have left in this world. Suppose they have made 70% progress in this life, they would be awarded say Tapaloka, and they go there and they finish off their next 30% and go from there to spiritual world. But the opportunity is there for us to directly go from here to spiritual world. Yeah, so even that is available within this world.
Okay.
You don't need to go to sequentially to higher planets and from there go. Actually, at the end of the day of Brahma, at the end of the life of Brahma, all the residents of Brahmaloka would go to spiritual world actually. That is mentioned in the scriptures. But again, that's a very long time. Brahma's lifetime is in trillions of years. Brahma's lifetime is there is a mention of how many, 484 compared to human years, 484 trillion 430 billion years, 311 trillion 480 billion years. Yeah, so it's inexhaustible time, and that lifetime is so relative. That's like one breath time of Mahavishnu. One breath, all the planets come out, and again they absorb in the next breath. So everything works relatively. So that is one breath time of Mahavishnu, and that is when all this existence manifests, and all this Brahmaloka manifests, and he lives for 100 years according to his scale. But that is about 311 trillion 480 billion years according to our human scale. Everything is relative in this existence.
Okay.
We'll learn about this in the future chapters actually.
Got it. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sorry, Prabhuji, can I ask one more question if you don't mind?
Yes, Prabhu.
So, when the jiva leaves the material body and before it moves on to the next body, during that period of transition, and considering the fact that the jiva is considered pure, would it ever experience Krishna or Super Soul in that window ever? Or it will only be possible if the karma is good regardless?
Yeah, very good question. Yeah, it doesn't experience God if his karma is bad. For example, actually, Yamadotas in the form of subtle bodies, they also have subtle body. They would come and drag the subtle body. If the jiva is very, very bad, if the jiva has done a lot of sinful activities, the subtle body would be dragged from the physical body in chains, subtle chains. So yeah, in that moment, the jiva would go through tremendous anxiety in its subtle body, and he would be subject to severe punishment after that. So it's not that every jiva would experience. I mean, only the eligible ones would experience. But at some point in this life, in every human's life, Paramatma would inspire him to take shelter of God. At some point, it may not last, it may not repeat multiple times, but at some point, every jiva gets the opportunity to surrender to God or take the spiritual path seriously. Is someone who fans that fire at the time. It's like a spark. If you fan that at the time, you have, used your life properly. But if you don't fan it, yeah, you misused it. You lose the opportunity. But every jiva gets the opportunity at some point in time. Okay, so it's already
Thank you.
6:40. I think it is better to end at this point, isn't it? Is that okay? We went a little slowly this week compared to last week, because last week I felt I was a little bit quick and I didn't discuss in-depth concepts, and I'm satisfied this week.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll again join.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you all.
Hare
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuji.
you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji.
Prabhuji, I'm not sure if folks have already left, but I do have a question on this. Like when you leave the when you are leaving, like in the final stages, if you think about God or Krishna, like you were talking about, then do you get, do you get to be with Krishna at that point, or do you still, based on your karmic debt, have to take another life?
If you remember Krishna at the time of death,
Mm-hmm.
you go back to Krishna. There is no stopping you.
Okay.
Yeah,
But-
but it's impossible unless you lived a pure life and you have perfected your life. It's impossible. You cannot trick God, actually. There is no way one can get that without really paying the price for it. No shortcut. Actually.
What if you practice, right? Like, what if you practice God conscious on a daily basis? I know death, like you mentioned, is super painful. How do people remember, like if they have practiced a God conscious life, then do you think that it will come to them in that
Possible,
moment?
yes. Anytime you go through difficulty, if you're remembering God,
Mm-hmm.
that is how you train your mind to remember God. And daily, soaking your mind in the chanting of the name of God, through the spiritual practices